Hello and welcome to the Big Debate on S3, SABC News Channel 404, YouTube and TikTok. My name is Tembekile Mkhototo. The president of Cameroon is 91. He's been in power for half a century. President Museveni of Uganda was born just after World War II, if you can believe it. His government has banned gay rights and imposed the death penalty on same-sex relations. Vladimir Putin has been in power in Russia for 25 years, and in China, Xi Jinping has cleared the way to be president for life. And across the world, 94% of heads of state are men. By contrast, most voters are young. Times are changing, and so are our values. How well do our leaders represent us? Who would you like to see lead the country? And what skills and qualities would you look for? How would you hold them accountable, for instance? Well, with me to discuss this are some of the youngest and smartest minds in the country. Zula Patel is an author and activist. Resofetse Khosi Chikane is a Wits lecturer, author, and political commentator. Bulelani Balabala is founder of Township Entrepreneurs Alliance. And Nozimanga Mlalazi is an activist and commentator as well. Now, also engaging in this conversation this hour are the leaders of some of the newer political parties in South Africa who are standing in the elections for the first time, including Vuyiswa Ramokgopa of RISE Mzansi, Henry Masugu of Build One South Africa, and independent candidate Anele Mda. And in our audience, as always, the young people of South Africa. Welcome to you all. As ever, you at home can have your say. Do you want leaders who are 81 or 31? Career politicians or community activists? Before we start our conversation, have a look at this.
21-year-old Zula Patel is proof that having political power is not the only way to enact real change. She is doing this by building libraries at these schools as part of efforts to encourage reading and fight the high illiteracy rates.
I started my activism at the age of 13, having grown up in South Africa. Staggering 81% of grade 4 learners in our country can't read to remember, making them functionally illiterate.
She came at a time whereby we needed an improvement in our learners' reading skill.
She is a clever girl with big, beautiful hair. Her hair is thick and full of coils.
Most of our learners come here at the library to borrow the books. They have even started projects like creative writing. They write their own poetry, their short stories because of her encouragement.
We're a country of so much fine print that is progressive, so much paper that's progressive, but I think the challenge is implementation. Political parties need to ensure that they involve young people, not just to occupy seats and to fill quotas, but to be active role players.
Just like Patel, who's turned her love for people and a just society into a passion project, Balabala, who attributes his success to his community, is the founder of Township Entrepreneurs Alliance. The company was founded in 2015 to help empower township entrepreneurs through engagement and learning platforms.
The inspiration then, about 9 years ago to start T was to say one Saturday, once a month, we're going to gather local township entrepreneurs in one room so that they can do two things: share information and get to know each other. And 9 years later, we've been able to directly impact over 80,000 township entrepreneurs. You can't be self-serving. But sometimes when you find individuals that are self-serving, that are ego-driven, they will not want to collaborate with others because they always want to be the first. So if you're going to start a political party, be ready to be the last.
We'll speak to the politicians in a moment, but I want to hear more from the young people, some of whom were in that insert. Bulelani, you're here with us on the Big Debate, and you make an interesting point where you're basically saying to be able to lead, people need to be willing to be last. What do you mean by that?
No, man, I think what's important, and I think what's been globally attributed to South Africa, all over the world, is the fact that the spirit of Nelson Mandela. And the biggest thing around that is the connotation that says it's oneness, but we serve. Under the backdrop of the fact that 27 years, that means servant leadership. So if I'm going to put myself in a position of leadership, it's not for self-gain. It means that I'm going to have to come last. it means that there's certain things I'm going to have to want to step away from. So the biggest challenge that we have is that we've got leaders that are flaunting luxury in the face of poverty. We've got leaders that are excited about toppling over a particular government, but no one is talking about how we are actually going to build this coalition. So when you sort of then talk policy, individual policy, how then do individuals' policies thrive in an economy where there's different political parties? And that's the missing gap. Okay. So which is why as individuals, we sit at home and we're confused. Should we vote for them? Should we vote for them? We're excited about a coalition, but the excitement is ignorance because we want to topple over people, you know, as opposed to talking about how these 5 or 7 people would work together if there was an actual coalition.
So servant leadership
what does
in a way.
unilateral policy look like?
And Zuleka, one of the things you've suggested, in fact, is that to lead, one may not necessarily have to do it via the ballot or go the traditional route of politics, win an election. But how do you lead in that sense when those who win the election run the show?
I would like to defer you from the thought that those that win the election run the show, because that's how we give politicians this power to have this lifestyle where we worship them as though they're our gods and they're totally out of our reach. They don't run the show. Politicians cannot exist without the community and without community leaders and community activists. And one thing I have picked up in the past couple of years is the notion of politicians working in silos. That will never work. You will never ever effect any change in society as a politician if you work in silos. You need the community, and you need the community's strongest voices to lead you and guide you into solving the toughest challenges that the community faces on the ground. And that's the only possible way you will also be in touch with what the challenges are on the ground. So I don't think politicians run the show because you've won the ballot. You absolutely don't. Thinking that you run the show allows you to also think you're a god over people and people should worship you and you should be out of their reach. Instead, when you win based on the ballots, you are now part of the community that has voted you into power.
I want to ask actually one of the parties running for the first time. So as you hear Zuleka rightfully say, the politicians don't run the show. It tends to feel that way because of how much power they wield. But are you humbled to hear that, especially from a young person?
I'm not humbled. I'm actually in full agreement with what she's saying. And I think that really embodies the ethos of RISE Mzansi. We exist to return power to the people. You know, many of myself, our fellow leaders, are ordinary citizens who ourselves felt very frustrated and detached from politics because we live in a world where politicians do politics for themselves and no longer in service or for the service and benefit of the people. So, you know, when that phrase in the Freedom Charter that says the people shall govern, it means something. It means that the power that is borrowed, lent to politicians is actually the power of the people.
Henry, how do these new parties then convince people that you guys will do things differently? Because what the youth has seen leaves much to be desired, and that's why there's essentially a breakdown in trust between politicians and the electorate.
No, thank you, Temegile. I think I must first acknowledge my fellow panelists here and agree with them, in fact, that what we have lacked so far in this country, at least, is that we do not have people who commit themselves to be servants of the people. The leadership that we have so far has been made to believe that they are actually in charge, as you had said, you know, but that is not true, which is why as Build One South Africa, we went down to the people and we consulted the people on the ground and we said, what is it that you would like to see? And some of the things that they brought on board was that we would like to be represented by the people who come from our communities. Allow us, in your systems as a party, to nominate people who come from our communities, people who have been serving the communities, to be able to go and represent us either in council, be it legislature, or in parliament. And it's a fallacy to think that as a politician, if you are voted into power, therefore you become the god or you have all the power. In fact, our model is very clear that once you have voted us into I'm not sure if we should even call it power, but let's call it office. Once you have voted us into office.
But what's a real example of being part of the community, right? Because ultimately, a politician is a politician for all intents and purposes. We see them come into our community and then, well, they leave. Maybe they'll come back in a few months, maybe a few years.
Temegile, you say that because our history as a country has shown that that is the case. But that is what we are trying to change now. The current leadership that we have in the form of the liberation movement has made us believe that politicians should only come when it's election time or whatsoever. But that is what we are trying to solve for, to say that politicians must be part of the community. As a community member, having voted for me to be your councillor, you should be able, on any particular day, to be able to come to me and say, Chief, the electricity is down, the meter box is down, what do we do? What are you doing to fix for that? And communities must have access to the people that they've elected to be in power. What
Of is that true, though?
Is not what's happening.
Is that, but why is that true? I mean in the sense that the mainstream politicians who come via the big political parties say they are part of the community, but they are very removed, and even their reality, day to day, is different from that of the majority. So how do you lead people whose reality you don't share?
No, it's because they're not incentivized to do so. So many people in this room would have participated in an IDP, you know, Integrated Development Plan, which is what local government is going to do for the next 5 years. And people are gathered together to come talk about what our plan is going to be, and then nothing ever happens, right? The politicians decide what's going to happen. And the problem is, there is no mechanism that we have in this country where every one of us can put the fear of God in a politician. Outside of the elections, you can participate in any meetings, you can do this, you can do that, you can write letters, you can do public comments. None of it matters. And the problem that we have is that we don't have ways of incentivizing politicians to be responsive to communities. What we have is that we hope on the goodness of the heart of a politician to be responsive. And so long as that is in place, that we're willing that they must wake up in the morning and feel like I want to take care of
Do gestures like saying, oh, we'll use a public hospital, you know, I'll take public transport, does that make a difference? Because we see a lot of that where, oh, well, with the NHI, for example, that'll allow everyone to be able to go to Bara. But let's be honest, how many of them are going to choose to go to Bara if they've got a choice?
I mean, our country does like symbols, so I wouldn't say for everyone it's an impossible thing. But symbols can only take you so far when people are hungry in the country. Symbols can only take you so far as you're unemployed in this country. Right? Seeing someone taking a taxi or seeing someone take any form of public transport is nice, right? Until they leave and you find out that, no, the public transport doesn't work. It's not safe. It's not hospitable. It's not good for us in any particular way. And then people become even more divided at that point. And I think that's the problem that we have. And not all politicians, but it's the culture that creates politicians in this country that entrenches that.
You know, Zimanga Khosi referenced earlier the idea of striking some level of fear, if you will, a fear of consequences for our politicians. Can we do that? And is the ballot enough to do that?
Okay, so firstly, Sanbona, free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, right? Secondly, I don't think the ballot can do that, because I think what we don't take into account is that power is corrupt and corrupting. And what the new parties need to account for is whether their ethical commitments will survive the test of power.
So, Anele, you've got an interesting history in the sense that you've been part of the quote-unquote mainstream politics, been in a party, worked your way up in those structures. Now you're running as an independent. What at this point is propelling you, pushing you, if you will, to take this route when in those vehicles you were clearly frustrated and none, not saying none, but what you wanted to see wasn't necessarily happening?
Thank you, Tembegile. I think first of all, we need to create in South Africa a new trajectory of how we define leaders. Leaders must not be people who are ready and willing to go to public offices and occupy them and say, my hand is up, I will serve. There must be work that is on the ground that can affirm your leadership. There must be a community that knows you. There must be a community that knows you. There must be people who say, we don't know her name, but we know the work that she has done, as distant as she has been from us. But we have seen her dirtying her hands and doing the work. I started being an activist in this country when I was 17 years old. I started an NGO that was to deal with the issues of HIV/AIDS when the peak of stigma for HIV positive people was at an but the will, the drive, the resolve, and the commitment to serve the people was there. That's what has defined me. That's what has made me to be an activist for over 26 years. Being in politics was not as a result of me looking for power. It was because I was looking for a space where I would exercise influence, where I would have a voice that would be heard, which I would carry other people whose voices are not heard, where I would put my face for those people who are defaced by conditions and circumstances.
What changes people, though, Anele, excuse me, what changes people? Because when you all come in, you come in with the most, a better phrase, became part of the system.
The good thing about Anele, I've never been part of the system. The nobility of what I stand for and what I stood for then remains the same. I'm talking here as a person who went to serve in Parliament, left Parliament, not with any scandal. I left all the temptations that were there. I lived the test of time for all the things, the perks that are in Parliament. But I resigned because my drive and my resolve is always about serving the people of South Africa, which is, again, what I've come back to do now, serve honestly, with integrity and accountability.
That's a good note to leave it. You're watching The Big Debate. We're live on S3, as well as the SABC News Channel 404 TikTok, as well as on YouTube. We're back with more after this. Welcome back to The Big Debate. We are still discussing leadership. South Africa is made up of over 60 million people. Just over half of them are women. A third are young people under the age of 35. Our youth, sometimes dismissed as the TikTok generation. One thing is certain, though, many young people in South Africa have hopes and dreams and passions that are different from previous generations. Well, we've been to visit a group of South Africans discussing sexual identity and sexuality. Have a look.
My name is Relebogile and I'm on Constitutional Hill. We are here for a vibrant town hall debate to hear from young queer individuals. We want to know, what do they want to hear from our leaders just up leading to national elections? Which leaders do they need? How do our leaders need to look? And what do they want to hear from them?
My frustration about democracy as it stands right now is that our only way to show active citizenship is through voting. And even that is frustrating. Even like when we see the results, we're all going to be frustrated, we're all going to be disappointed. And there aren't enough mechanisms for people to actually voice or participate in the democratic process anyway.
Let's say you're in a tight corner and they say either left or right.
Your assumption is that the system works and it doesn't. That'll always be my check. You're going to be disappointed in 5 years. We're going to be having the same conversation.
How shebile ke mang they can lead, and what type of qualities do they need to make sure everyone is represented?
It needs to be a leader that is well informed and well aware of the current issues affecting the youth, affecting poor people, middle class.
I think it is definitely refreshing to see young people in leadership positions, and it's definitely what we need. Someone who lives with disabilities, for me, would make an excellent president.
Because I'm a queer person, people who are conscious about queer lives, people that are not queerphobic or transphobic or any of that.
I need to know that I am voting into parliament people who are going to pass the bill to decriminalize sex work.
The one that is inclusive of refugees and migrants. You know, like what we always talk about, Africa without boundaries or borders is what we want to have. That way I can come to you, I can come to each and everyone else's house. No documentation really needed for a black person like me.
Let's ask two of the parties then contesting the election for the first time, having seen that insert. Vuyiswa Henry, to what extent are your parties deliberate about the inclusion of young women, specifically young black women, but also queer people?
So that has been a core priority for us from the start. One of the things we decided was that we were not going to have a youth league, we were not going to have a women's league, because we believe that the conversations and the issues of women and youth should be had at the main table, where the decisions are made at all times. So if you look at our leadership, fully representative, youngest leader, 21, oldest leader on our team, 70 years old, which allows us to have the benefit of the intergenerational knowledge transfer. But what's also very important is that it shouldn't just be about box ticking. It's really about the fact that we do have a country that is majority young people, majority women. But the average age of people in parliament right now is 58 years old. And so as the primary shareholders of the future, we have to be at the main table where decisions are made.
What about queer people once more? What about people living with disabilities, for instance? We don't see a lot of them in the mainstream as far as politics is concerned.
Absolutely, and I think it's a function of how the culture of politics has evolved over time. We know that politics and society in South Africa is very patriarchal. It is, very kind of closed door in that way, and I think part of how we redefine our politics is to build an inclusive politics. And as I said, I think from a RISE and BOSA perspective, it's something we've been very intentional about.
Henry, are you building one South Africa and allowing women, queer people, people with disabilities, an equal stake in the project?
100%. So we definitely are inclusive in all aspects of our party. When we started Build One South Africa, we were very intentional to ensure that young people particularly become part of the structures that we have in the party, who can participate and contribute into, first, the building of the party as a political party, and secondly, into contributing into the policy positions of the party. And we are very clear on that this country in the next 10, 15 years will in fact be only effectively carried forward by young people. And as you would know, the median age is 29 now. So we are very intentional in making sure that young people and women in particular take up leadership positions, especially in the party. You look at our list in itself, youngest being 21, going to parliament, and it's a woman, it's a young woman. Queer people, we do have structures of queer people in the party. They're very much involved with the policies of the party, with the functions of the party on a daily basis. So we are very intentional about ensuring that the marginalized people, especially queer people, the disabled people, are part of the conversation.
Nozimanga, are you happy?
I'm not happy just because I know that representational politics are limited, right? So if we know that the system is fundamentally corrupt, whether or not we change the faces, the structure itself remains the same. And so the reason why we're disappointed every 4 years is because the structure remains the same. So the assumption that putting young people in those positions doesn't change anything if the positions themselves and the power remains the same.
Later, you look at the main parties in this country, all of them are led, for all intents and purposes, by men. The ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, the DA, John Steenhuisen, EFF, Julius Malema, the IFP, Nkosini Hlabisa, Action SA, Herman Mashaba. Where are the women?
It's not that women aren't there.
It's not that women aren't there. I mean, here's Vuyiswa right here. It's not that women aren't there, but these larger parties are known for silencing the voices of women and not allowing women to rise beyond men in the positions within the party. Because, I mean, we've seen it with the governing party itself, the governing party that prides itself in freedom, equality, equity, and prides itself in the creation of a brand new South Africa, having been the ones that brought us to where we are, transitioned us from the then apartheid system to now our current democratic dispensation. In 30 years, in all the leaders who have run this country, we have not had a single woman. And the one time a woman tried to contest, what happened? She was silenced. So it's a culture where within these larger parties, we allow for men to have louder voices, and we allow for men that are also egotistic and speak well, and men that are charismatic to lead politics. And this is what we deem as and someone that represents the community essentially. Okay. So we've allowed these men to have a louder voice than anyone else in their parties. And should you try to speak above them, you are pushed into a corner. And that's the culture we need to make sure that after next week, when we go into the 7th administration, we ensure that that culture comes to an end, where people cannot speak above certain political party leaders, primarily because now we've given men that are charismatic higher than thou positions in society. We need to make sure that we dismantle that culture, that anyone and everyone can speak and can rise.
I want to ask the politicians about accountability, because that is one of the main frustrations, right, when you speak to voters in this country, young or old, that there are seldom consequences. People do wrong and survive over and over again. And that's not just limited to the ANC, by the way. Why should people trust that the three of you actually sitting here today, as people who present something that's new, will be able to hold yourselves accountable and hold those who are with you now as you come out of the starting blocks accountable? Anel.
The people of South Africa, Tembegile, must look at me and use what I've done in the past as a measure of who Anele is. I must be a person who passed the test of public scrutiny on the basis of the things that I've done, that I can account for, and the people of South Africa can be able to say, she did this, and she said she will do it, she didn't do it, and she must not come back. Time for us to be complacent and allow people who go to public offices to do willy-nilly as they please at the behest and at the expense of the electorate. That time is over. The people of South Africa must be unapologetic of holding us accountable when we're in public office.
What would accountability look like for you, though? Would you fall on your sword? I mean, you're an independent, so it's interesting.
Yes.
What would accountability mean? Who holds you accountable as an independent?
Firstly, going to Parliament, I'm the most exposed person. I don't have political shield that can protect me in the event that anything happens. In the event that I'm caught I'm caught on the wrong side of the rules of Parliament. A member of the public can send a report to Parliament through Ethics Committee. The Speaker takes me to Ethics Committee to explain myself. That report in 14 days in the National Assembly is adopted. I'm dismissed from Parliament. That's how easy it will to get rid of me. Right. That's how directly I'll be accountable to the people of South Africa. I will not have the political factions that will at least cover me.
The ones who use their numbers, for example,
absolutely,
shield you through process of Parliament.
I will be exposed, and that's what is needed.
Rise, how do we trust that you're not going to change? And when you get there, can you guarantee young people who see you as an option that those who do wrong in your party will fall on their sword?
Yeah, so one of the things that we have implemented for the election of our public candidates, because we must remember the leader is not the one person. The leaders are the 20, 50, 100 people or 400 people that sit in Parliament as well as in the legislature. So we need to hold all of those people to account. So we've said, number one, we want people to directly nominate their representatives from their constituency. That's been something that we have been advocating for. And equally, it is the same constituency that we believe should have the power to recall their representatives, whether they are in a provincial legislature or in a national legislature.
What does that mean, Vuyiswa, for the speed of the process? Because, again, people want to see accountability almost now.
Yeah, of course it cannot be that you are recalling people every month. So there has to be a process in place wherein people can lodge concerns or complaints that they have about representatives, and that the party is mandated to deal with it. So another thing that we've done actually this week is we have been going community by community and sharing what we call the People's Contract. Now, the People's Contract is not a pledge, as the name suggests. It's an actual contract wherein we make our KPIs, for lack of a better word, freely accessible to people. And we have committed to a number of things: accessibility, quarterly reporting to our...
Are those the performance indicators?
Yes, those are the things that sit in our People's Contract, which our national leader has signed, all our premier candidates and public representatives have signed, and we have taken it to the communities that we went to go and ask for votes from. And we've left it with them to say, hold us accountable.
What does accountability look like to you, and how far would be too far as a leader surviving wrongdoing?
Tabile, let me start by saying that currently you have what we call the Public Service Commission, which in its current state, there is 14 members who are selected by, first, 5 of them by the National Assembly, then the rest by the different legislatures in the different provinces. So first, we must professionalize that Public Service Commission, make sure that it's not selected by politicians. First of all, they must be independently selected to make sure that they hold accountable all the public servants. That's on number one. But when we bring it back to Build One South Africa, I think I've alluded to the fact that our process is very open and clear to the public to be able to select and elect their own public representatives, which is why first we said, if you want to be a candidate in our list, first you must go and collect 1,000 signatures and come and present those and say, this is my community that has elected me and said they want me to go and stand and represent them. So when you are then failing in your job, those very same 1,000 people must be able to write a petition and say, remove this person, they're not saving us anymore. And more to that, our processes within the party, they are very much open, but also you can look at the track record of the leaders that we have in the party. Look at our leader, Mmusi Maimane himself. He has laid quite a clean record. There is no scandal of any sort. And you look at the other candidates that we have in our list, they have a clean record of service, and they are very...
Okay, I hear you. Bulelani, I want to bring you in. Sorry, did I cut you off mid-thought? Sorry about that. I saw you glitch for a moment. Bulelani, do you have any newfound hope that indeed the people you work with, the young business people who are trying to make it, that they finally have real, credible options politically?
I don't think anyone in this room should trust politicians.
Yes.
Because trust...
Yes.
I think up until a politician has stood the test of time, we should trust no one in this room or anyone who's outside this room, because trust should not be a cheap thing. And I think the biggest challenge around the concept of Ubuntu, we've freely traded our human right to individuals. That's why we're being treated the way that we are right now.
So will you lend them a vote? I can't remember whose campaign it is now where they talk about lending us a vote.
So I think the positioning should not necessarily be to lend the vote, which is why the missed opportunity in this political season is there's a lot of promise peddling, but no one is saying this is what I've done. So which is why, when you sort of look at the previous statisticians in general who would consistently quote the fact that the needs of the people is 1, 2, 3. It's housing, it's jobs, it's water, it's electricity, but we keep giving out T-shirts and food parcels. So what we need...
Okay. I think that's a good note to leave it.
I want to tell you what we need.
In 10 seconds.
In 10 seconds, what we need credible leaders. So when we ask them, can we trust you? No one will say, no, you can't. So they need to show us what they've done in their previous life or their current life to be trusted.
Exactly. Okay. We'll pick that up in a moment. This is the big debate. When we come back, we'll talk about how to deal with politicians who are criminals. We've touched on it somewhat. This is the big debate. And that was just a little bit from Tandu Tamazwai's song, Emini. It's from her new album, Sankofa. In it, she speaks about how we are basically led by thieves and laments the need to get the thieves out. In South Africa, we still have people who are accused of stealing lots of money, who make it onto the nomination lists and could possibly end up in parliament even in the new term. We have political leaders who have dodged corruption charges for years. I'm not naming names. Their parties seem to be willing to ignore this or simply delay any sort of consequences. I want to take that and bring it to you, Khosi. Everyone talks about how they're fed up of corruption. No political party in this country says it's not fed up with corruption. But why aren't we seeing the consequences by it? And do all of them actually, in their own rules, it's one thing to talk about parliament, in their own rules have enough as far as policy is concerned to make sure that there are consequences even before you are convicted?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the last time a high-profile politician went to jail. I think the last one must have been Jackie Silebi, and I was still in high school back then, right? That there are no consequences for bad behavior, but you do get rewarded if you make sure you don't betray your friends in any particular way. And I think that's a culture issue that we have in certain political parties, right? The other aspect is that we also don't follow up with these investigations ourselves as citizens. So I'll be the bad guy here and say we had an entire thing called state capture. Not many people can tell you what the recommendations of the State Capture Commission are. So how do you hold someone accountable to the State Capture Commission if you don't know what the recommendations are? And it's a cultural thing that we need to have about how do we make sure that we're following the cases of corruption to the end?
Well, even with the word recommendations, those who are named in these reports will say it's a recommendation, not an instruction. So could we tighten the language, perhaps?
I mean, so it's not a recommendation, it is an instruction. Right? So the Commission says, Parliament, you must make the Independent Police Directorate independent. You must do that. Parliament just passed a piece of legislation a month ago, didn't do it. No one paid attention to it.
I'm going to take two hands on the issue of corruption in a moment. I've noted you, sir, as well. But Nozimanga, I want to give you a shot here. If we all talk so much about corruption, it's in the papers, it's on radio, it's on TV, why is it not a bigger election issue?
See, I think we've all picked up that I'm a very skeptical person, and I think the culture of corruption starts very early. As someone who was involved in Fees Must Fall, and as someone who is currently a university student, even SRCs are corrupt, right? So the rot is everywhere, right? So I agree with you when you say it's a cultural issue, and I do agree that it's accountability that has to happen on all levels and not just at Parliament. It has to start all the way from the bottom right till the top.
Okay, let's take some questions then from our audience. Sir, your name and your question, briefly.
Name is Sisingam Swabud. I'm from the Free State. I'm from where corruption is gospel, you know. Look, we need to be worried when people that are coming here making promises for young people are receiving money from, like, the Oppenheimers. I mean, look at today, right? Today alone, in front of all these young people here, you have Ms. Versa from Action SA. Well, what's the Kristen Louboutin, 25,000 rand shoes? She's got a Hermes bag, which she was holding, it's 100,000 rand. Now, how do you trust that with state resources, what they're going to do for all of us?
Okay. Hold on. Vuisa, are those 25,000 rand shoes?
No, they are not. But
can you show us the bottom?
But even if they were, I worked for them. I run my own companies. I have not spent a cent of anybody's money but my own.
Let's allow Vuisa to respond. You were saying you've worked for your money.
Important. I'm a business person in my own right. I run a number of different businesses. I sit on a number of boards. I am not a stealing politician, and I'm not excited by other people's money. So even if they were 25,000, which they are not.
But you took the money.
Okay, hang on. Let's not monopolize the show. Let's allow someone else to ask a question.
My name is Maibuya Mandela. I greet you all in the name of Free the Children of Gaza.
Are you related to the Mandela?
I'm the great-grandson of the former president of this country. I want to, I have a problem with people that are starting opening new political parties. And you are a stepchild of the DA, and you are funded by the Oppenheimer, Rebecca Oppenheimer, who stole the mineral resources. So you, the two, two parties, you are a what? You must keep that in mind. You are a stepchild, abandoned child of the DA that declared war against its citizen. You are the product of the DA. You stole money. You are using our mineral resource to fool our people. For an example now, you can't pronounce the word land expropriation without compensation. You can't say white monopoly capital. And you, both of you can't pronounce that. So I have a problem with new political parties, but I don't have a problem with trying something new, because everything that you are doing is not new.
Let me
Since
ask you
1994, even Ms. Mda is correct, because it's something new being an independent candidate. We are testing it.
But let me ask you a question. So those are the new parties, and I'll get them to respond. But Anele also has a political history. Is that more comfortable with you because she comes from older, established political parties?
Anele Mda is a product of the leadership of Julius Maleme, which inspired more young people in South Africa in leadership.
But my point is...
I'm going there. These ones are trying to fake Julius. Anele Mda must stop saying, the only thing that I had her saying is that we must... I agree with the way that she sees things. We need to try
briefly.
But she's saying she was not part of the system. Immediately when you went to parliament and follow structures in politics and contesting inside political parties, you belong to a what?
Thank you. So, hang on. I think they're about to elect your award councillor. Let's start with... Henry?
Yes, Tembekile, I think it's unfair to even characterize Build One South Africa as an offspring of the DA. You would recall that our leader, Mmusi Maimane, in fact resigned voluntarily from the DA when he realized that the DA was not going to achieve what we wanted, which is one united, prosperous South Africa, particularly to ensure that the black child can be taken care of in South Africa, because the DA had no intention whatsoever to ensure that there is inclusivity, particularly of black people in South Africa. So we are by no means an offspring of the DA. I have never served in the DA. I've never been in the structure of the DA, or even a supporter for that matter. Many other people in the leadership of Build One South Africa have never been in the DA. But let me speak to you with regards to the funding.
Please.
Let me speak to you with regards to the funding. I think if you understand the issue of political funding, you would understand that if the people that you mentioned, having funded our party or every other party that has been funded by those very same people, did not only fund the two parties. They funded even your party, the ANC. They funded even the other big parties. So you cannot, and you shall not characterize us as children of white monopoly capital whatsoever. We are funded as a political party. And the fact that we went to the IEC and we declared those funds to show that we are transparent, we are not hiding anything. That's
Henry,
why we declared those funds.
I've got you. I do want to, before we wrap up this segment, to give you guys a fair chance to respond. Vuyiswa, is all money good money as far as campaign funding is concerned? Is there money you should be saying,
I'm actually glad you've asked it in that way, because there is a lot of money that we have said to. In fact, we've been offered far more than what we finally took in the end.
Who did you turn down?
No, many people. Because why? Because we have a tendency, and I think it's obviously a function of our trauma from the poor leadership we've experienced in the last 3 decades, to imagine that every single person does not have ethics, does not have integrity, and cannot actually stand for anything. I left my thriving businesses. I left a thriving career that I have built over the last 20 years as a young black woman in this country against all odds. I have never met even Rebecca Oppenheim. I've never looked her in the eye. But there are people out there who care about this country and are willing to do more than just sit and complain. They're actually willing to take money out of their pockets and contribute. I'd like to see, by show of hands, how many people in this room have ever donated even 100 rand to a political... 100 rand. 100 rand. 100 rand.
Okay.
And you know why I say that?
Okay.
You know why I say that?
Hang on. Wait. Thank you. Thank you.
No.
Hello, hi. Thank you.
Because
We've
you know
heard
why?
you.
Because if we get the democracy we deserve. If we want a country that works and that represents us, we must be willing to also be active citizens and do the work. We must either show up and lead, or we must contribute financially, and I have done that.
I want to take
I'd like to see what else.
Manga, because you wanted to respond to Vuisa's point, which was saying, well, we're not donating to the parties, yet we're scrutinizing, perhaps unfairly, those who do.
So mine is to say, you're speaking about how we're not contributing, we're not opening our pockets with what money in this South Africa? Right? And I think my second
money to buy those shoes.
Hold on, guys. Remember, this is not going to work if we can't hear each other.
Money to buy those shoes.
So I want to return. So Henry makes the contention that everybody is getting Oppenheimer money.
No, I didn't mention a name. Please do not mention a name. I did not mention a name. I said the people that donated to us did donate to everyone. Didn't
just donate to you, right?
To the other party.
So if we understand that these people donated to everybody and they're donating stolen money, stolen from the backbone of the working class in this country, right? What it speaks to is that all of the politicians are corrupt. And I think for me, my contention is we need to change the system. We need to rise up and think about what new ways we can participate and create a new kind of country where we can all participate, as opposed to relying on leaders.
Got you. Let's take an audience question. Hi, ma'am, very briefly for me, please.
Okay, hi. My name is Nkate Komkonto and I am from Midrand. Listening to today's debates just made me realize how out of direction our government and the country is. Because to start off, we came here saying we were going to talk about social issues and things about the community, and now it has like diverted into corruption, and now we're pointing fingers. Is this not what happens in Parliament, where they're supposed to be going there solving problems, telling people that, okay, these are the people's problems and what solutions can we come to? But instead we're facing with politicians accusing each other of stealing this and this. And when are you going to get to the solution? Yes, you can stop bringing up, we've been in this kind of a problem for like since the end of apartheid, but then again, you're still bringing your own apartheid.
Thank you very much. You're live on The Big Debate. In a moment, we will take final words from our panel, including the politicians who got a lot to chew on in this break. This is The Big Debate. Welcome back to The Big Debate. We're still asking what kind of leaders does South Africa need to take this country into the future? 30 years on, do we have the right grain to work with? Well, let's hear the views now from people who are here in studio. A lot was said in the last while. Jose, you were itching to go, in fact, earlier when the young lady over here said, just sitting here, she's been frustrated because we don't seem to be making progress or sticking to the issue.
Yeah. So I've been in civil society for the last 10 years now, and we're having the exact same conversation we were having back in 2012, 2011, when I was still a first-year student. And I think it's the way that we hold people accountable who are in power. We don't hold them accountable to specific things. You said you're going to promise us X, Y, Z in 2014, 2019 elections come, did X, Y, Z happen? We then get completely confused by the discussion of we want to end corruption, we want to end unemployment. Well, what was your plan to end unemployment? Like, what were the details of it, and were you able to do it? And we need to also change this culture about how we actually ask these questions as well. So like the political funding one, I always find it fascinating. In reality, there's like 15 people in our country that fund politics in this country.
What's in it for them?
Because they want power and they want to control the economy.
Anele? As an independent, you're even smaller as a political entity. How do you then protect yourself from being influenced by the people who fund you? He who pays the piper calls the tune.
I've done that before when I was in Parliament. I have had to say no to a lot of things, which obviously come with the territory of being in Parliament, because there's so much power that you wield, there's so much exposure and and also strategic, authority that you hold. But I think being able to know that my integrity is far more important than any price that can be attached to it. And what makes me to be here today is because I have been able to say no when I needed to say no, no matter how tempting it has been. Going forward, I believe that it's not just about not taking things that are being put, but it's understanding what was in it for the people when you stood and say, I'm raising my hand.
Okay. After this quick break, a last word from the candidates on what they could do for you come next Wednesday. This is the Big Debate. Welcome back to the last part of this first hour of the Big Debate on leadership in South Africa. Before we wrap things up, we've got 3 people who will appear on the ballot next week, and I'm going to give you each a chance to convince us as to why you're the right choice. Risa?
So I think we've been led by the established parties. We've seen the promises. We're all scarred, actually, and traumatized, and it's evident in this room that we have lost trust in the political establishment to take us forward. As new parties and as new leaders, we are providing an opportunity to craft a new future for this country. Many of us come from civil society. We have people who have been activists, people who have been business people who have track records, people who have integrity. We need to take our power back and use this election as an opportunity to craft a future. And we can decide to be stuck in the past with the old leaders, or we can take charge of our future and vote for new leaders who will at least be able to come with new ideas and help us navigate our biggest challenges.
Henry.
Sure. If South Africans, particularly young South Africans, know what they need in this country or what needs to happen in this country, I think they have the choice now to choose leaders who are credible, number one, to choose leaders who have given them the opportunity to choose their community leaders who will become one-packed to take into the office of leadership and deliver services to the people of this country. And I think Build One South Africa is one such structure that provides all South Africans with an opportunity, first, to hold us accountable. Secondly, we have a clear plan of what needs to happen in South Africa. We have tabled a jobs plan because we believe, and we are of the firm belief, that jobs will be what will restore the dignity of young South Africans.
Jobs will restore the dignity of young South Africans. Anele, why are you the woman to vote for?
I'm the woman to vote for because I am going to serve the people of South Africa with integrity. I bring diligence. I bring an uncaptured voice, an independent perspective that is undiluted trust to the people of this country. My commitment to be accountable directly to the people, to be scrutinized by the people of South Africa, is what has defined my independent candidacy. But I also want to say these elections about the demonstration of the voice of the young people who are the future of this country. I'm saying young people must go to the ballot and they must make their voices heard.
In one sentence each, Zuleika, Bulelani, your thoughts after the first hour?
I think my first thoughts would be, going into next week, I need each and every single young person to make sure that you're not just going to sit home as a registered voter, but you're going to actually go to the polls and make your mark on the ballot. Because young people, the only way to have a voice in shaping your country and shaping the future that you will ultimately occupy, no one else, you, is for you to make your X on the ballot next week and make that X thinking about your future. Don't think about the now, think about the future.
Bulelani, one line.
My one-liner is, no political party creates jobs. Their job is to create an enabling environment for jobs to happen.
Right, and that'll do it for the first hour of the big debate. Do you want to go out and vote next week based on what we've heard here? The second part of the big debate continues online. We're live on YouTube and TikTok in a moment. Thank you for watching on S3 and the SABC News channel. Bye-bye. Welcome to the second hour of the big debate, live online for you via Facebook as well as YouTube and TikTok, I believe, tonight. We're going to open this hour of the program to questions from our audience. And Siamo from Youth Capital is actually with us. You've traveled quite a distance to be here, Siamo. What's your question?
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to the big debate. Thank you to the audience, to everyone watching at home. I'm going to ask a very interesting question to our panelists, and I hope a few of you can offer an interesting answer. We have the same conversations about young people not getting jobs or young people not voting, but here's a question that I don't think many people are asking. Last year, public employment programs, like the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program, created 440,000 job opportunities. Most of those were young people getting work for the first time. Many of those young people, the program is done now, can't get a job now, despite the fact that they were just in a job program. We researched this and we found that a lot of the problem is they don't have mentorship, they don't have the particular skills that help them move from their first job to their second job. So, not the only thing, but one thing that contributes to lots of youth unemployment that we don't speak about is that once you get a job, people struggle to keep that job or to get a second job as young people. So what do people on the panelists, what do the panelists rather, people at home, think we should do to help young people who do get a job get another job after the first one?
Or keep the one that they got. Puti, you had your hand up for quite a while. Come closer. Briefly.
I'll
try.
What's your name?
Mashed Not Potatoes.
Okay.
So the question I wanted to have was actually to the leadership here at Build One South Africa. There's a lot of talk about funding, right? But one funder that they haven't mentioned at all in this hour is a man by the name of Mr. Martin Moshal. This man is a funder, he's a billionaire philanthropist, but he's also a proud supporter of the paras known as the IDF. So I want you guys to then reconcile and ask, how is it that you want to build one South Africa with us, but yet you're supporting the exact same people?
The IDF, you mean Israeli Defense Force?
Exactly, those paras.
Okay.
But wait, but how is it that you guys want to build one South Africa with us, but you're supporting people who are slaughtering thousands of women, children, and young people in the separated places over in Palestine? Thank you.
Okay, so let's deal, Henry, let's start with that question. Are you receiving funding from someone who's a supporter of the Israeli military? And what does that mean then for South Africans who've taken a stance against the actions of the IDF, the killing of civilians in Gaza at the moment?
Tamegele, we've made all donations made to Build One South Africa public in the IEC website. If that is the case, that is the case. But let me just answer this question on Israel and Palestine. We have made a clear stance.
Did you receive money from this particular person?
Yes.
I am not privy to that information. If that is the case, then he would have seen it on the IEC website.
Would you, hang on, wait, hold on. Would you reject a donation on the basis that it is money that comes from a funder who also is a supporter or a donor for the IDF or the Israeli government?
Our party has a funding structure. That structure decides where the money, which money they accept.
Okay. Hang on. Hold on.
I cannot give you a yes or no because I do need
There's another
to explain.
question.
But I should answer the Israel and Palestine question. We have made a clear stance to say that cease the fire now. There should be no killing of innocent civilians in either side. None. Cease the fire.
But it's not enough grounds to reject a donation.
Look, I have answered the question on donation, and I'm not.
But it's also not either side. It's an occupation. It's a military occupation.
Cease the fire.
Hang
on. Let's allow Zuleika to speak, please.
The fire
no,
now.
I just
Cease
want to,
the fire.
Just give me a second, Henry. I just want to make something clear. If you're saying you guys have made a stance, and I want to understand this because you're branded on building one South Africa. How do you build South Africa yet you can't even make it clear that you do
we have never come out and said we support.
That you do not support the very same government. Let me finish. That you do not support the very same government that is slaughtering and annihilating lives in Palestine, which is the exact same structure that has brought South Africa to this current position. It's an occupation just the same as the occupation that occupied South Africa under apartheid and previously, before apartheid was legislated, colonization. So it's the exact same thing. How are you going to build one South Africa if you cannot support Palestine?
Cease the fire now. Stop the killing of
okay.
In Palestine.
Let's allow Henry to respond, and then we do have to bring in some of the other questions. I see you, sir.
Cease the fire now. Stop the killing of innocent civilians. Stop the killing of innocent civilians. Let there be conversations about what actually needs to happen in the Middle East. Cease the fire now.
So I find...
Is that a sufficient answer or a cop-out?
So this actually links to all the things we were talking about earlier, about how we hold politicians accountable, about who are you accountable to first, us or your party? And so long as you account, and you always hear it when you ask a tough question that's against your party line, it's about how do I maneuver to make sure that my higher-ups don't get annoyed with me. And it's the problem of our democracy. Because you can still leave here and be like, so long as my party's happy with my performance, I'll still have a job. And we need to change this, right? And we need to hear politicians and political parties giving us ideas about how you're fundamentally changing accountability structures in your parties, how you're creating new constituency-based politics in this country. So I hold you accountable. So that if you say something against your party, you can look at them and say, but my constituency believes in this. So I don't care that my leader disagrees or my funder disagrees.
I want us to deal with that very important question from Youth Capital about young people and jobs, because we always lament how bad the situation is, right? Over 7 million people in this country do not have work. And the point you were making, Siam, was that even those who get into these programs, they're short-term. So what will the three of you, what would the three of you do to keep people in employment? Fuisa?
So I think that distinction between work opportunities and actual, real, sustainable jobs is a really important one. Work opportunities, internships, learnerships are not jobs. We have not managed to structurally deal with the unemployment crisis. Because why? Because our economy is not growing. There cannot be sustainable job growth outside of economic growth. We're currently at less than 1% economic growth. Many of our peers on the continent are north of 5%, even 6% onwards. So if we want to get to actually creating real jobs, we have to grow the economy. And there are a number of ways to do that. And we don't have time for that. But I think the other thing is we need to create multiple pathways for young people. Not everybody is going to go into academia or into the profession.
So how do we do it? We all agree we need to do it. What do we do to do it?
A number of different avenues. So, for example, those who are in the arts should be able to go to schools that harness the creative sector, the arts, etc. We don't have a number of arts.
But the question is the after, right? So everyone goes to school.
Yes.
You're looking at a rising number of graduates who are without work. So you've studied and done and gone for a learnership and whatever. What happens after that, I think, is the question.
What I'm saying is that we are pipelining. So a lot of people are going to university, for example, getting formal education, coming out with degrees and not finding work in the limited sectors that they are. So number one, you have to grow the economy to create more jobs there. But number two, you must have multiple pathways. Not everyone will go that way. In fact, there's a lot of new industries also that are opening up. Renewable energy, for example. Business process outsourcing is a massive industry. We are nowhere there. So what are we should be actually skilling young people now to get ready for those jobs.
How do we keep young people in longer term employment?
When young people graduate and leave universities, we need to adopt a 3-year internship period. What will we do with those 3 years? The first year will be a workplace in work training. That is them being exposed into the work environment for a full year. And you are giving them stipend. That's the only time you must give them stipend. The second year is the first year of the internship. This is now the work experience accumulation. The third year
do they get money during that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And here is the trick. You do not compensate all companies that participate in the Youth Employment Service. You do not give them their compensation up until a young person who entered for the work in service training has secured a permanent employment, because you are addressing unemployment. Okay. We are not ticking. We must stop ticking boxes and employ young people, not with 350.
Okay, ma'am, you had a question.
Okay, so
let's listen to the question.
So my question revolves around the biggest thing here, right? South Africa clearly does have a broken system. And whenever it was mentioned that there is a broken system, and as a party you're not adequately addressing it, you haven't addressed how you are going to try and fix the particular system where all governing parties can then fall under. You're speaking about how you as an individual party essentially stand for certain things based off of your manifesto. And I think it's important to understand how detrimental a broken system can be, because it's not just an economical thing, because all of them are interrelated. And a primary example of this would be South Africa is the rape capital of the world. And all of these things, the national DNA database is in one facility, Pretoria, in the whole of South Africa. There is currently a backlog in these particular facilities, and people who are victims of rape don't get justice because their perpetrators are not then prosecuted because there isn't enough facilities to facilitate this particular crime. And this is a real problem that is derived from this broken system. You're not telling us how you want to fix the system. You're saying, I'm leaving Parliament because I've seen these things and I want to, and I've resisted temptation. Gotcha. I have left all of these things, but you're not saying how you've spoken up against it and acted against it. I'm just saying in general, however, don't feel offended if it was too fit to wear it.
Thank you. Hang on, I'm trying to take as many questions as possible, briefly.
I just want to say the youth of these days, they're trying to do whatever they can to develop their community and themselves. But it's so difficult to do that when you're demotivated and you're facing all these issues. So guys, do us a favor, implement programs and systems that helps the youth, that enhances their mindset, build their mindset in order for them not to depend on you, but to depend on themselves. And thirdly, what are you willing to do to ensure that all the youth in SA are involved in all the decision making that involves all the issues they're facing, because they are the most important people?
I want to give that to you, sir, because you actually work with business people in the township who are doing their best. Give us your sense of how much support there is for people who are trying, as she say, young people who are trying to pull themselves out of poverty.
You know, it's interesting being here and watching politicians evade answering questions. No one answered the jobs question.
No, you are lying. I answered. I answered.
Hold on. Let's let Bulelani finish, and then I'll throw it back to the parties.
No, let's not debate. Let me explain, because I work with breadwinners every day. The industries that you're mentioning are not going to create jobs in the next couple of years. So if we go skill, the adoption won't happen in the next 2 or 3 years. What you are talking about is a feeder. And the unfortunate thing about the feeder is that at the end of that 3-year cycle, there still won't be jobs. And they will be recycled. No, let me explain. The important thing here, and I think the biggest thing, and that I agree with you, is that the economy is not going to grow. When you look at how much we've been growing, I mean, that 1% is a regression when you sort of look at that against inflation. The only way you're going to create jobs is when you start to empower these young, amazing individuals who are in this room to enterprise. You know, the biggest employer in the country is small business. 60% of employment is small businesses within the country. When you sort of look at policy and you look at red tape, it's not accounted for. There's over 2 million informal businesses. Now, when you sort of then look at a market and an economy that's growing, that's the market and economy that's growing and can create jobs. The question is, are they talking to how they will enable that economy to further grow and not to be recognized as a formal economy, because it's not an informal economy. Because the township economy is the most formal economy you'll ever find. You know, you find a Kota individual making over 580,000 rand a month on a 38%.
I hear you, Bulelani.
Let's create opportunity.
What are the three of you going to do for the township economy to grow it?
First,
Henry?
Number one, improve the infrastructure in the townships, make our townships safe. How? Rebuild the roads in the townships. How do you make the townships safe? Capacitate community policing forums. Let them work hand in hand with...
Let the man finish.
Let him.
But Henry's not saying anything.
You are delaying us. You're not going to get a chance to ask a question. Respond.
Improve the infrastructure in the townships, build roads, make communities safe, capacitate community policing forums.
What's the actual jobs plan? Bulelani wants to hear what your jobs plan is. Because one of the things, hang on, hold on. One of the things your party talks about, Build One South Africa talks about putting a job in every home. What does that even mean? And what is a job by your definition?
First, you'd start by growing the economy. We all understand that if you let me speak, then you will understand how. But the current economy is not enough. It's not going to absorb the 7.8 million people that are unemployed right now. First, you need to make sure that you grow the township economy, but also go back to the rural areas. If you go back to the rural areas, improve the infrastructure, invite big business and partner with private sector so that they can go back to the rural areas and invest, create employment. But we're not only trying to get people employed, we're trying to get them to employ themselves and also grow enough so that they can employ other young people. We have proposed what we call the Jobs and Justice Fund. This Jobs and Justice Fund will be able to fund small and medium businesses from young people in the townships and also in rural areas. They should be able to get mentorship from people who are in business, not only mentorship, but also be capacitated to run the type of business they need to do. Hey?
I'm saying cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, so a couple of comments ago, Bulelani made a statement that no political party creates jobs.
He said none of you have told us how you're going to do it.
No, but you can't say both. You have to say no political party creates jobs. So we accept that. It's a fact. What political parties, what governments do, is they create an enabling environment for businesses of all sizes to grow and absorb people in employment. So the idea also that everyone must now go be an SMME or a small business owner is just a fallacy. We cannot absorb the 12 million unemployed people in SMMEs.
So what is your realistic plan, Visa?
We need to catalyze the high growth and high employment industries and reinvest in them, like the manufacturing industry, which has been in decline since 2008. The Western Cape economy, for example, was run from the textile industry. We know in Gauteng it was powered by mining at some point. And we need to go back to industries that are high labor absorbing, because that's also where you get skills.
To do that, then, do we then say to companies that want to operate here in the retail space, for example, you have to buy clothes that are made here, because the textile industry can't exist if it has no one buying its product.
Absolutely, and that's what I was going to get to that point. Now, when you want to talk about this, that's an economy, right? So you've got to have people actually, there must be a market to actually buy that stuff. Or you must have industries that are exporting out to the world. So, for example, agriculture, high labor absorption, high export industry. Industrial goods, we need to manufacture things that people in the rest of the world want to buy. That is how we grow jobs in the long term. And the reality is that any politician that looks at you and says, I'm going to solve the jobs crisis in 100 days is lying to you. It is a long-term project, but we can do it incrementally. Okay. And that's why we've put a plan together, and we have been very realistic and said, this is the target we can reach in 3 years. It cannot be done in 100 days. I'm sorry, guys. That's the...
Anele?
Firstly, there's nothing feeding about what I said earlier. When I said that we must remove the current state of internships, that is a year, which does not contribute towards dealing with unemployment, I raised facts. I did not raise any fallacy and some myths here. So I wanted to debunk that first. Secondly, the creation of jobs, what we need to do practically. Firstly, for young people who are entrepreneurial aspirant people, we need to remove the red tapes that make them unable to access the industries. We need to ensure that IDC does not say we've got an SMME fund that is specifically looking for young people, but they say your company must have an annual turnover of 5 million. Where will he get the 5 million? And then you come back and say after that, this company must have operated for 3 years. It must have met all the statutory requirements from SARS. Where do you think that young person, are you really dealing with a young person, or you are dealing with some old man who has had pensions and all those benefits that young people don't have? So we need to be realistic.
Ma'am, you've had your hand up for quite a while. Please stand up and tell us your name and then ask your question very briefly.
Hi everyone, my name is Tuli. I have a question specifically for the political parties, and at no point have any of you engaged with overhauling the system. We have the solution from BOSA, which is essentially that they want to meet the needs of the poor black youth South African with the funding of white monopoly capital. The township economy will never grow because it's not the interest of your founders. You have nothing with that at all. You cannot exist in a system that is built on systematic exclusion and exploitation. We need the complete overhaul of that system, and that is why political parties will continue to fail.
Ma'am, come closer. Your question.
Good evening to the House. My name is Ngobile Mazibugo. The question that I have is directed to the issue of the high rate in crime in South Africa. I want to ask that with the high rate in crime in our cities in South Africa, looking at Johannesburg City, what are measures that the parties are willing to take to address the issues of the high rate in crime in cities like the Johannesburg CBD and areas like Hillbrow? And how are you going to make sure that these areas are safe for young people, are clean, and are easily and freely accessible for young people to be in them?
Build One South Africa, you go first. Two questions, including the one on, I think you said it's not in the interest of their funders, right, for the township economy to grow.
Yeah.
Look, let me start with the crime one. I think it's simple. Professionalize policing, increase the police force, of which currently you have only 110,000 police people looking over 62 million. Professionalize policing, increase the police force, capacitate CPF, have them trained by SAPS and give them the necessary tools to actually curb crime. But more to that, communities themselves must stand and actually participate in the project of making sure that our communities are safe.
Is it in the interest of your funders for the township economy to grow?
It's in the interest of South Africans to grow the economy.
I said, is it in the interest of your funders for the township economy to grow?
It is, yes, because, let him finish. Yes, it is. Yes, it is in the interest of our funders. Do you know who our funders are?
Talk about them, you know them.
We have a platform under Build One South Africa. We are crowdfunding as a Build One South Africa. So ordinary South Africans, you are quick to mention the big funders, but we have ordinary South Africans who have donated millions of rands into the project of Build One South Africa. And you can go on our website. You will be able to, in fact, donate even yourself your 100 rand that you have. We have a crowdfunding. Platform that 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 South Africans are contributing to? Yes. So is it in the interest of our funders to grow the township economy? Yes, it is in the interest of our funders to grow the economy, because our funders are the general South Africans that you find in the townships.
You saw quite a lashing earlier about the people who are donating to RISE. Do they want young business people like Bulelani to grow and thrive?
We don't act in the interests of our funders. We act in the interests of the people that have been part of building RISE and Mzansi, supporting RISE and Mzansi, and contributing to our manifesto. And our manifesto is very clear on the type of country we envision. RISE and Mzansi supports a social democratic dispensation. We support a social market economy. We support, in fact, having both a reimagined economy, and I'm not sure if we understand this overhauling the system, I'm not sure which system we're talking about, but I'm saying for us, we talk extensively about and practically about how we need to reimagine the economy of South Africa to be more inclusive, to be more equitable, to be more just.
Who are you talking to? Are you talking among the party faithful? Do you lobby, for instance, the big business people who may take a liking to RISE to say to them,
not at all.
help people like Bulelani?
I'm sure people here have had an opportunity to watch us on social media over the last 18 months. We have canvassed our People's Manifesto in communities all over South Africa over the last 12 months. We have spoken to people at all levels of society, people who are, and people in both rural, township, and urban areas. Okay. And so the point is, we embarked on a very inclusive process, and it is our views and our values that have attracted people to our organization. We do not take policy direction from anybody outside the room. And I want to appeal to the people in this room that take time to actually familiarize yourself with some of our policies, with some of our views, because that is what defines us as an organization.
We've got a question from the people who are watching at home. Pumla says that we need literate, educated, and governance-oriented, experienced leaders, academics chosen according to their ability and capability, with constant monitoring mechanisms and accountability. Nozimanga,
yes.
Is that not pie in the sky? Because every once in a while we circle back to the idea that people with a certain level of education, a certain level of, exposure to the broader world would do a better job. So, is that real?
Exactly that, but I also think my frustration with your position and the idea of speaking to the people that are in the room is that the people in your room are people who are very privileged, and that's the conversation we're not returning to. So even the idea...
How do you assume that?
You asked the question about what system we're talking about. We're talking about a system in which 90% of the people in this country only live on 15% of the wealth. We're talking about a system in which 70% of businesses are white-owned, and you guys are happy to accept money from the Oppenheimers and all the big money, but that's only a fraction of the money they actually have, which they have stolen from generations of working class people in this country. And that is the fundamental problem.
Can I ask a question? Can I just
I'll allow you to respond. I want to bring in...
I don't want to respond. I want to ask a question.
Okay, ask a question.
So that money that you speak of, is it a problem that we're trying to use it to rebuild our country?
The problem is, this is the problem.
So what must we do?
Let them hash it out.
What we stand for and the work we are doing.
Yes.
Do you have a problem with the work we are doing? So answer me. Do you have a problem with the work we're doing?
So your first question was about if I have a problem with using the money.
No, with the work we're doing.
Your first question...
Because the work we're doing...
Wait.
The question... Let's allow them to speak.
So the question started at if I have a problem with you guys using the money that you're accepting. And my problem is that very money you're accepting is stolen money, right? And it's money that ought already to be redistributed systematically. And so you're solving the problem at the end where you ought to be dealing with...
I'll hold it for you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm Bukasher Braff. I'm a member of the Wits Liberated Zone, which is a group that is against genocide, against war, against injustices happening globally. So as Henry keeps saying, he doesn't know who his funders are. And I vehemently reject that notion, because how, as a politician, are you not going to know who your largest funders are? For example, Martin Michel donated 4 million rand to your party. That is a massive fraction of the 15 million, 16 million rand that your party has raised. How are you accepting money from a known Zionist and seeing it as not being you, being complacent with genocide?
Okay.
How can we be certain, how can we be assured that when you go into office that you're not acting as an agent for the apartheid Israeli state?
Hang on, I'll allow you to respond.
My question is for everybody on the panel. Everybody's talking about employment, building systems, but I feel like we're ignoring the grassroots. The grassroots, the education level in this country is not at the level where people can compete in the current job market. That is why people are unemployed. There are jobs there. I'm a social media manager for an international company, but that is a skill that comes with privilege. Some people don't even have the privilege to go to university. So how do you guys plan to help these kids, right, before you help us? Because they are the foundation and the future of this country.
Okay, and let's actually hear from the kids.
I'm not going to do anything.
Come forward.
Overhaul the system first.
What do you want to say? What's your name?
Greetings to the House at large. I am Hope Zulu, and I am from Annandale Secondary School. So as we know, South Africa has persistently high rates of hunger and malnutrition among mothers and children. More than 27% of children are stunted and 61% of kids are iron defiant. Because we speak of unemployment, we have to speak of the development of the children of the country before we speak of unemployment. Continue. The country will never be developed if we do not develop the kids first. If children are hungry and are under defiant, we are all gonna die soon. So we as the children, we as the kids under the age of 18 are the leaders, are the futures of next year and in 20 years to come. We will be the ones on this panel. You will not be here.
Her name for reference in 20 years is Hope, and your last name?
Zulu.
Hope Zulu. Remember that name. Hello. What's your name?
I am Sibisiso Khadebe. I am from Annandale Secondary School. I'd like to base my question to Mr. Henry. You stated that for job creation or job empowerment, as you said, you're gonna bring infrastructure to small underprivileged communities. Why is that? Already there are tenders that went out, but yet there is no result of what those tenders had been done. And what are you doing? And what are you as a party gonna do to hold those people accountable for all the millions that they spent, regardless of not fixing the infrastructure in those certain communities? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Walk that way. And then you're going to be the last one, unfortunately, because we're almost out of time. But I see you, sir, okay? You must come back next week. Stand here. What's your name?
Good day, everyone. My name is Mabakhatla Timile, and my question is, well, since election season started, as I like to call it, I've noticed that many of the political parties have been saying, if you vote for us or if you elect us, we're going to end load shedding, but never really deliberating on how they're going to end load shedding. They never really explain. I mean, I do understand that Rome wasn't built in one day, and it's not going to happen within a span of 6 months or a year or something, but please tell us. Today we are marking day 58 without load shedding, and some people are celebrating this, but I think of it as a total disgrace because we as a nation have been pushed to a point where we view a mere 58 days with electricity as a big feat. But we're supposed to have electricity on a daily basis. So what are, the new parties?
You want to know what the new parties are going to do?
What the new parties are going to do, what is the solution, and like I said before, Rome wasn't built in a day, but please give us a full plan on what you're planning to do, because if we are a democratic country, so you're supposed to include us as the youth to know what's going to happen in our own country.
What's your name, darling?
Mabakhatla Tsimile.
Mabakhatla.
Yes.
Good to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, sir, you are the last person today with this mic. What do you want to say? What's your name?
Good day, everyone. My name is Gift Footis, and I'm going to talk about water. Many places suffer because of water. Kids, children, and mothers, they have to go long distance to go and fetch water. Others fetch water from rivers, others fetch water from tanks, even though they have taps, but their taps, they are not coming water out. Please fix that situation.
Gift, thank you. I think a round of applause for the guys, the future leaders from Enedale. They are from Enedale Secondary School. We're almost out of time, but I want to give everyone a final shot. Bulelani, let's work it that way and then round the circle.
Okay.
No, man, you know what? Yeah, a lot has been said here, right? But I think for me, it's important that part of building an inclusive economy, obviously my work is exclusionary because we focus on, the previously disadvantaged economies, right? Which in actual fact are the power hubs of the country. So when you're sort of talking about industrial hubs, that's where commerce happens in the township, There's production and commerce that happens. In the household, they're baking amakhe, scones, at the very same time they're consuming, they're selling. And I think we need to find ways of being able to engage that market a little bit more and create it, because that's where you'll find your next tier of development. And I think there's a number of different things that we then need to do. I think from an education level, how we layer out the education needs to be in such a way where you teach the individuals on how to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. They might not all go and become entrepreneurs, but they need to know how to enterprise in various spaces. And I think we've seen these stories being applied within these amazing communities, right? So I think, but over and above that, don't trust any politician.
Yes.
Let's make sure that we hold them. Let's make sure that they hold. Let's make sure that we hold them.
But they don't trust you either.
Yeah, don't trust me, then. I'm the last person that you should trust, right? Because what you must trust is my actions and deeds. So when they have acted, we will trust them.
Got you. Zuleka?
Don't know your deeds.
Thank you. I think my closing remarks will be directed at the party leaders as well as Anil Mda as the independent candidate. Is you cannot touch on unemployment without talking about the challenges we have in our country with higher education and basic education. You are going to have a country of unemployed youth if you have a country that has a crumbling system of higher education. Many of the challenges that we face that contribute to the high unemployment rate arise as the challenges that are faced within higher education. And the challenges in higher education aren't surface level challenges, they have roots. Those roots are within basic education. And I am saying this as a person who actually does the work of going to communities and working with schools to improve the infrastructure in rural and township schools. My organization builds libraries in rural and township schools, because if you don't have a nation of children that can read, you essentially do not have a future as the country. And so if any of you are going to be focused on the crisis of unemployment, you cannot do anything without talking about higher education and basic education. And you cannot just talk, actually visit communities, go to schools, go look at the infrastructure in rural schools, go to universities, go listen to the challenges of students that are underfunded, students that have incomplete qualifications.
As we conclude, we're done with questions, but there is a note that I just saw, and it's a question that I think we haven't really touched on. We're not touched on at all. In fact, the young lady over here, as you conclude, wants to know, for example, what you guys are doing for young people who suffer with mental illness, which we know also has very real-life effects on how people live on the day-to-day. Henry, that plus your response to everything we heard, even from Enedale Secondary.
Yeah. Tamile, thanks. I think it's disingenuous to actually say do not trust politicians when we know that even our democracy, we achieved it through political activity, and we will progress this democracy through political activity. So At a time when we are at a political high, you have people who come here and tell young people not to trust politicians, instead of encouraging them to rather invest further, invest more in understanding the politics of the country. So I just want to put that point across. But on education, and I appreciate the young people who are here today, but as Build One South Africa, we have proposed that 30% is simply not enough to say to a child, go and pass your matric with 30%. That is why we are increasing. When we get to government, we will increase that pass mark from 30% to 50% so that we can give our young people a fighting chance when they go to TIP.
You can go. Are you done?
I'm not done.
Finish, Henry.
So that we can give our young people a fighting chance when they do go to TVET colleges or university. But not only that, we understand that our teachers, the teachers that we have now, are not motivated because they're simply not paid enough. So we must pay our teachers more. We must also ensure that we regularly assess them to make sure that they remain competent and actually pay them, the ones that are more competent enough. But on public education, our infrastructure is a problem. I have visited so many schools that are broken in this province of Gauteng. So we need to make sure that we revamp the infrastructure. But not only that, but partner with private sector. You have schools like Curo, you have schools like your Spark schools. Let's go and reinvest. Let's take those business models and go use them in townships and also in rural areas. But now, what we have also proposed is
briefly.
I mean, I have many questions to Megile, you can.
Briefly. Remember, everyone else still has to go.
Sure. Just on mental health, we in fact have proposed that mental health care should start from ECTs. You should have psychologists, counselors from ECTs up to primary, high school, and also in university, and also in workplace, and it should be free of charge. Available across in communities. You should have community workers who are walking around in communities attending to mental health issues. But let me speak briefly to the issue of water. In fact, Build One South Africa has championed a program that we call a government in working. This started when we went to Palabora, and we found a community in Palabora that was drinking water from a river with animals doing their laundry in that very same river, and there's crocodiles lingering around. And we went back to that community. We drilled boreholes. We have provided water tanks to different communities, but we continue also to say to the government, we have lobbied, in fact, the government to say that you need to fix the infrastructure that is broken. Currently, Tembegile, you have 42% of our water that gets lost in the pipes. And you've seen many pipes that are leaking, and we are losing that water.
I've got you. Unfortunately, we do have to give everyone a chance because we're at the end. If you guys can, please, this is a timed program. Briefly. Fuisa?
Yeah, so it is hard to go through all the issues in a short time, but what I will say is that it is evident that there are systemic linkages between all of these issues. Like Zuleka was saying, you can't even talk about higher education without basic education. You can't talk about basic education without talking about early childhood development. You can't talk about early childhood development without facing the fact that 26% of children under the age of 5 suffer from stunting and therefore are not even able to learn. You can't talk about any of that without talking about the fact that we haven't succeeded in reversing apartheid spatial planning, that we don't have a fair and equitable society, that there is massive social and economic injustice in our country that kicks out the outcomes that we've seen. And you cannot obviously talk about even unemployment because our unemployment is structural. And it is by design that we find ourselves in this scenario. So the truth is, we can wait for all the stars to align, for the politics to be perfect, for the politicians to be the ones we want, for everything to be perfect, or we can start now.
Okay.
And we can make a choice to back the horse that we think is if not the best one, the one that you can live with.
Yes,
What I'm saying is that there are a number of parties that have proven themselves completely unfit to govern this country. Those of us who are here, well, I can't speak for Anela, we have never governed, quite frankly. We have never been in parliament. We have been, like yourselves, frustrated at the situation at hand, but we have made a choice that we're not going to sit and be frustrated. We're going to do something, and this is what we're going to do. And it's not perfect, I concede, but this is the best option that we have, and I'm calling on every young person to in whichever way that you are making your difference, let's all play our part towards fixing.
Thanks, Mr. Anele. Again, briefly.
Independent candidates are the game changers. We are the tilting forces that are taking the shape of the new trajectory of the landscape in South Africa. Give them a chance, and let's redefine the political landscape. On mental health, it has to be categorized as a basic need. It must be incorporated in public health facilities like your clinics, like your hospitals. In higher institutions of higher learning, it must be offered free of charge because of the mental distress and the fatigue that students go through. The last thing I want to address. Okay. The students that receive financial assistance from NEFSAS cannot continue to be victims of a system that they did not design. The fact that we get them blacklisted, for not being able to pay the student fund, yet they are not yet employed, is a travesty of justice. And we need to re-look at that matter and rechange it.
I'm nervous because you've made notes.
I'll be short. So just three things. It's a phrase I keep telling everyone, we need to stay very focused going into next week. A lot of it, I think someone mentioned like the trauma and the betrayal we've had from the last 30 years, and we are projecting a lot of it onto the new guys. That the only way it can change is if you change the status quo. That you just need a different party. That's kind of the first thing. The second one is I hate, and I deeply hate it when people say economic growth will save this country.
Yes.
And I hate it because we've already seen this game play out. In the 2000s, we had economic growth of 6%, 5% per annum. We've seen that happen. Unemployment went up, poverty went up, inequality went up. Because the structure of the economy siphons that money to particular communities and industries. So it's not about economic growth. And I do like what Risa said. It's about what industries do you want growing in any particular way. Then the last point, if you're not talking about like structural change to the political system, we may as well pack up our
Exactly.
Right? And we have, as young people, for the first time, and as few people have heard me talk about this, a big advocate, for the first time we have an opportunity to change our political system with the Electoral Reform Act. Okay. It's going to Parliament for the next administration. It's the first time we can say, closed list PR system that is madness. It means that you're only accountable to politicians. Get rid of it. That you must be held accountable to constituencies. But if we let Parliament decide on that bill, their self-interest will say, we want to keep the status quo, we want to make sure people are only accountable to us and not citizens.
Ms. Maga, let's end as we started with the voice of a young person.
Thank you.
Am I not young?
So,
I mean, you are. You are.
At heart.
Maybe a younger person.
Thank you.
So, as I've said repeatedly, very little changes if the systems remain the same. So mine is a challenge to everybody in this room, which is one, to imagine what a radically different South Africa looks like. But secondly, think about what we need to do to take back the power to create that South Africa.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here tonight, for joining us on The Big Debate. It has been another wonderful edition of the show. You'll be able to make up your minds as we count down to elections 2024. 30 years of democracy. She's already campaigning. On Wednesday, is that who you will vote for? We're back with The Big Debate, Thursdays, 6 p.m. S3, SABC News Channel 404, YouTube, and on TikTok. Bye-bye.